In this video, we're going to talk about how to play a melody with block chords. I guess we could call this playing with blocks. It's not just for kids. What I'm actually talking about is a type of chord voicing which was made popular by the great jazz pianist George Shearing. And you can hear this style used by hundreds of nightclub and country club piano players, background piano players around the world, including me. I have used this style as well. Very effective. Now, when I refer to voicing a chord, as you might remember, when I talk about chord voicings, basically that is talking about the various ways that a chord can be expressed, or basically the way the notes of a chord are arranged. So, for an example, here's the basic C major chord in root position. It is voiced in root position. We could also voice it in first inversion, second inversion, and so on. Now, the best way to illustrate how these block chords work is to switch to the overhead camera. So, that's what we're going to do. If you've been playing piano for a while and you've been playing around with chords, you know that the very same notes can produce dramatically different sounds depending on where they're placed. So take, for example, this C major 7th chord. We might choose a chord voicing that stretches the harmony across both hands, like this. And we would call that an open voicing. A close voicing of the same chord would look like this. And so the notes in this second example are fairly close together. In fact, they're just cramped. They're crammed together. And we would call this a block chord. It's a form of close voicing that usually accompanies each note of the melody when we play in block chord style. And it produces an almost unmistakable cocktail piano sound. So here's how it works. To play a melody in block chord fashion, we take the melody note and duplicate it one octave below. So it might look like this. Well, actually, it will look exactly like this. Now, we also need to know what chords are going to go under that tune. And so in the first measure, the chords are going to be F6. And then here, we're going to use F major 7, and then this chord, well, it's going to be something of a surprise. So I'll show you what it is when we get there. So you now have the top and bottom notes of our chords. And so all that's left to do is fill in the other chord tones. Now in this case, we're going to use 5 voices, or 5 notes. In other words, each chord will have 5 notes. We'll play 4 of the notes in the right hand and 1 in the left. So you remember I said that the first chord, in fact, this chord goes all the way until the last note of the second measure, is going to be F6. So to fill in the notes of F6, we have to add these 3 notes. So here we have a block chord. Notice we can't fit any more notes in there. These are all the notes of F6. And so we keep adding all the notes of the F6 chord. And then here, the melody is actually the 7th. We're doubling the melody note, remember, and it happens to be the 7th of this F major 7 chord. And then we go to this surprise chord. This is F minor major 7. So there's F minor, and then we add a major 7th above the root. And that major 7th is also the melody note. And so it's down here as well. So now when we play this little phrase in block chords, it sounds like this. We can even use thicker chords when playing block style. And so in this example, we're going to alternate the F6 chord with an occasional 7th chord or a 9th chord. There we have an F major 7 now, and then back to F6. And here, F major 9, F6, and then these two chords. By the way, the melody I'm using is from a great standard tune called Stardust. You should check it out. We might come back to this tune and analyze it in a future video. But for now, let's have some more fun. Let's apply this block chord method to a couple of very familiar melodies. Two melodies that I've used before. So here's an old favorite, only this time we're going to play it in the key of F major. See if you recognize this tune. Yep, very familiar, isn't it? Now we already have a pretty good idea of what the chords are, and so what we're going to do now is fill out the rest of the notes in between these two notes. Now because we're using 5-note chords, to fill out all the notes in between these two A's, if we only add these two notes, we only have 4 notes. That'll work. But to make it a true block chord, let's make it an F6 chord. And then when we get to the second chord, we'll make it C7. And the third chord, we could go back to F6, but let's do something different. Let's do G minor 7, which goes back to C7 and then back to F6. Back to the C7, back to F6, C7, G minor 7, C7, F6, C7, and this is a little tricky. This is actually C7 add 13. Now we probably haven't talked about 13th chords too much, but basically what this is, we're playing this C7 chord. That's C7, C9, C11, C13. But we're not using all those notes. We're just going to use these 4 notes. So that A is the 13th of a C7 chord. Now we could make it simpler and just play F6 again. But I like that C7 add 13. Adds a little bit of tension. It's kind of hard to play. You'll have to roll it. Now, just like we did with the little bit from Stardust, we can add some different chords in there and make it even jazzier. We start with F6 again. And then here we can do F major 7. And then F6. G minor 7, C7, F6, C7, and then the same thing here. We could do this, or use this one again. So here is the jazzy cocktail lounge version of Mary Had a Little Lamb. By the way, if that C7 add 13 is a little tough to play, you can do this. So that's G minor 7, or actually it is B flat major 7, I should say. And then C7 and F6. So here's another familiar tune. I don't really need to play the whole thing. It's very familiar. It's written out for you here. We already know what the chords are. And because we're going to play block chord style, we're going to fill out all the notes. 4 notes in the right hand, 1 note in the left. We end up with C6. F6, C6, and then here we'll have a G7. C6, G7, C6. Whoops, I should have played G7 there. There we go. G7, C6, G7, C6. Now, notice this version, it actually, to me, sounds a little boring. There's too many G7 to C6 progressions. So, let's see if we can spice it up a little. Now, are you ready? Follow along very carefully. We're going to do the borrowed chord thing again. G minor 7, borrowed from the parallel minor key. And then F6, we can go to G9. C major 7. And then watch what we can do here. F6, G7, E minor 7, A minor 7, D minor 7, G7, C6. All right, now I want you to play along with me. I'm going to go very slowly so you can get your fingers around all these chords, and you'll be playing in block chord style. Are you ready? Here we go. So this is just a start into the world of block chords. This should provide you with hours of fun and exploration. I hope that you have found this helpful. You might be able to see by now that you can have a lot of fun with playing in block chord style. So, get your friends together, dim the lights, get them to tinkle some glasses in the background, and you can create your own nightclub scene. And then you can play romantic songs using this block chord style. Thanks again for watching. If you have any questions, any comments, please leave those in the comment section. I make every effort to respond to every comment and answer any questions that you might have. I look forward to speaking to you in the next one.